Here's Kevin and Tom on 760 WJR.
Honestly, what do you think is going to help bring down inflation? What's better for this country? Should we keep spending like Biden says he wants to and that we need to, he says, to bring down the cost of living? Or should we cut somewhere? 800-859-0957. 800-859-WJR. President Joe Biden did meet for the first time with the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, yesterday to discuss the national budget and raising the debt ceiling and not defaulting on our financial obligations. It was interesting. President Biden continues to reiterate this claim that Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans somehow want to cut Medicare and take away Social Security, even though Republicans keep saying, hey, that's not even on the table. We're going to protect both. So what is this really about? And to me, Kevin, it's just this difference in ideology. Biden does want to continue to spend. He believes that that's the way to lower costs for Americans, the cost of living. Kevin McCarthy simply says, hey, inflation has only gone up as a result of Biden's spending plan, so we need to cut somewhere.
Tom, it was a strange mood coming out of the West Wing where Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden sat face to face. It was a mood of hope. You don't see that too often there. Hope that the two sides could find common ground in a town where the two political parties cannot seem to agree on much of anything. But when I think about it, I think a deal makes sense. The American people are worried deeply about inflation. They're worried deeply about the growing deficit. They want those two things to be lowered. They want to slow spending. They do not want to default on these loans. The American people are pretty clear on this. So if the two politicians can walk out of that room with those two deliverables, hey, they both look great. So they make a deal. My worry is, will this be a deal that gets us anywhere closer to a balanced budget or a deficit reduction, which is what the American people are really hoping for? Joining us now is David Dulio, director of the Center for Civic Engagement and Political Science, professor at Oakland University. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well, guys. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. The way people were talking before this meeting, I have expected Joe McCarthy to be thrown out of the White House by bouncers or something, but they came out saying that they think they have common ground that they can find together. Was that all political theater beforehand, or did something change?
You know, to be a fly on the wall in that Oval Office when they met, I take them both at their word, right? That they found some things to agree on, but as you both know, you know, the devil will be in the details when they start to get to the nitty gritty of what might emerge as a compromise plan to raise the debt ceiling and to rein in some of the spending you were talking about.
I think they're in on it together so that they come out and they both look good, but nothing really happens, and the taxpayers really don't end up with a balanced budget in the next decade or more, and the deficit doesn't really get reduced. But I'm a little cynical on these issues. Do you think they come out of that room with something that's going to lead to either a balanced budget or a deficit reduction, or both?
I think that will be the rhetoric that comes out of it, right? I mean, we've been through this before. 10 years or so ago, we had the fiscal cliff where, it was more brinksmanship right up against the deadline to raise the limit. And we ended up with a plan that sequestered some funds from across the federal government that was supposed to do the same thing, right? And just as easily, or maybe it wasn't so easy, but just as that law was put into place, future Congresses can back off of it and change it, right? So, I think the reality is that something has to get done here because the government can't default on its loans. That would be I think a nightmare economically. Forget the politics of it, right? That could throw the world economy into a tailspin, I think some economists would argue. So they both know that, right? They both know that something has to get done. I think you'll see them play nice here for the next several weeks, but if it gets to a point where progress has not been made, I think it will pivot to, okay, can we make sure we blame the other side for screwing this up if it gets to that point?
Yeah, I don't personally think they're playing all that nice. I think behind closed doors there's a rumble going on. The first thing I noticed when Kevin McCarthy walked out was that he had a shiner, it looked like, on his right cheek. I mean, something was going on there. And I do think there's something, not physically, obviously, but Democrats, they said, listen, we are not going to give an inch. Joe Biden says we are not going to cut anything whatsoever. All you have to do, Kevin McCarthy, is agree to raise the debt limit. So that being said, what else can be done without, except for raising the debt limit if Democrats don't want to talk?
So McCarthy has some leverage here, right? Because the House is going to pass a bill to raise the debt ceiling with some strings attached, right? The Democrats want a clean bill on the debt limit, and which would just be, all right, we're raising it however many more billions or trillions of dollars, right? McCarthy's got this leverage that they're going to pass something and send it to the Senate, and maybe they pass it, maybe they amend it. That's where I think you're going to see the sort of conflict play out, right? I think although the Senate seems to want McCarthy and Biden to work out this deal, I think the rubber's going to hit the road when the House passes something and sends it to the Senate.
You know, there was this analysis done by the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, and in general terms, they gave two options. Either there's this across-the-board cut by 26%, or in order to maintain the status quo for Medicare, Social Security, veterans benefits, and the military, everything else would need to be cut by 85%. That's just in order to balance the budget. I mean, are we at the point where we are never going to be able to maintain a balanced budget and we'll always just simply need to borrow more and raise the debt ceiling once again?
That seems to be the path that we're on. I mean, the federal budget has been in deficit for decades. You know, the last time that we had a balanced approach to balanced budget was in the mid 90s when we had another Republican controlled Congress and Democrat in the White House, when Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton started to work out a path to a balanced budget. And since then, it's just been deficit after deficit, year after year. I think that to some extent we've become desensitized to this, that we just expect the federal government to either overspend or need to borrow, however you want to put it, right? And the amount of these debts on a yearly basis are routinely over $1 trillion. So whether or not it's sustainable, I don't know. I would have to ask an economist that, but it's certainly. I think what really rubs American people the wrong way is that they think about their own lives, and if they tried to run their household that way, they would never be able to do that, right? What makes the government any different? And I think that just sours them on the whole thing. Yeah.
And I think average American says, well, listen, if I can't pay my credit card, I simply just can't pay it, and I go into default, and that's not the option that apparently we have in the federal government, so something else has got to give. We hope they work something out that's fruitful for the country. Dave Dulio, we always appreciate you, Director of the Center for Civic Engagement and Political Science Professor at Oakland University. Dave Dulio. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
You too. Enjoy it. Be safe. Your calls are next. It's 800-859-0957. Are you just kind of sick of this? Always going into a deficit, operating that way? Do you do the same thing in your own household? 800-859-0WJR.